While the talk is going on, there's a children's program for anyone who'd like to enroll their child. Krishna Messiah teaches stories and music downstairs. If any parent wants to join along, that's perfectly all right too. Otherwise, thanks for coming, everybody. Sunday before the Color Fest 2026. Countdown has begun. This is our email address for comments, correspondence, and feedback. Our website is there also. And if you have any questions about the program here, which is going to last no more than an hour, keep them, make a note of them, send yourself an email on your phone, and we'll try to answer them downstairs during the dinner. That's my wife downstairs, by the way. She has no idea that we're giving a talk up here. Everything is inspired by the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the founder of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Om Manganati Maranda Syama Ganadana Savadhyana Taksayurmiri Tamyan Tasmana Shri Guruvaya Namaha Sri Chaitanya Yogi Snam Stapitam Bhutale Saivina Bhaktivedanta Vedanta Swapadanta. Kids will have to be a little bit quiet if that's possible. Thank you. Our theme today is leaping or limping. All of us can find a reason to just limp through life. I wasn't raised in a good environment. That relationship didn't work out. The boss didn't give me credit. Now I'm at a disadvantage. Here's something that's interesting. In real life, the limp is hardly ever alive. The limp is, in most cases, based on a factual disadvantage. I wasn't raised in a stable home. Most likely true. My boss has got it in for me. Probably true. The economy is rigged against my race, my ethnicity, my demographic. Yeah, might very well be true. But here's when our life becomes limping. It's when we take that truth and we turn it into a permission slip. We decide because the wind is against us, we're allowed to stop rowing. We find a comfortable spot on the bank of the river. We take ourselves out of the game. We put ourselves on the sideline, and we explain liberally and loudly to everyone passing by why we're not going anywhere. A limp is a story we tell ourselves to justify standing still, and a leap is the moment we decide that that story no longer has the right to stop us. A limp is a monument we build to our own misfortune. A leap is the courage to tear it down and use the stones for a bridge. Story of two sergeants, Miller and Hughes. In the mid-20th century, a study followed two men who had returned from a brutal prisoner of war camp. Both had endured the same deprivation, same lack of good environment, same systemic disadvantages. Sergeant Miller returned home and spent the next 40 years of his life limping. To him, the world owed him a debt it could never repay. Because he'd been mistreated by his captors, he felt justified mistreating his wife. Because the government hadn't provided enough reintegration and compensation, he bounced from job to job, blaming every boss for not understanding his unique trauma. Lived in a perpetual state of at a disadvantage. His limp manifested itself in every conversation. He led with his wounds so that no one would hold him to a standard of excellence. He died bitter, convinced that the system in his past were the sole architects of his misery. Now, as you might expect, Sergeant Hayes had the same nightmares, the same background, the same physical scars. But 3 months after returning, he made a leap that had nothing to do with physical ability. He sat at his kitchen table and decided that his captors had already taken 2 years of his life, and he wasn't going to give him a third. He didn't have a college fund. He didn't have a supportive environment. He worked double shifts at a shipyard. When his supervisor passed him over for a promotion, he didn't lean into the disadvantage of being a veteran with PTSD. Instead, he stayed late to learn the mechanics of the new engines. He leaped over impulse to blame his upbringing or his trauma. He viewed his past not as a limp that excused him from the race, but as the very reason he needed to run faster than everybody else. The limp feels safe because it provides a reason for failure other than the fact that we were just too lazy to pursue it. But as Hayes later told his grandchildren, the world doesn't care why you're limping. It only notices that you're not moving, that you're stuck. Miller lived a life defined by what was done to him. Hayes lived a life defined by what he did next. One man stayed a victim of his history, the other became the author of his future. And when it comes to faith in God, some of us limp, some of us linger, and some of us leap. We're all going to have times when we're tempted to limp. But here's the key, Krishna, or God, he didn't create you to live insecure, lonely, not having enough. We may have seasons of that, but God also knows how to heal. He knows how to restore. He knows how to turn things around. But as long as you're using the limp as an excuse, none of those good things are going to happen. So here's a summary of the two mindsets, the leap and the limp. The focus for the limper is the cause, living in the past. The focus for the leaper is the course. He's looking forward to the future. The language of the limper is because of such and such and such I can't. The language of the leaper is that in spite of such and such, I will. The identity of the limper is, I'm a victim of circumstance. The identity of the leaper is, I am the architect of the response to my problems and challenges. The result of the limper is that he stagnates with all kinds of good reasons and excuses. The result of the leaper is that he progresses with no excuses. If you're going to fulfill your God-given destiny, you can't go around accommodating the limp, making excuses to settle. Caru, I've been injured. I've been hurt. That's why I'm angry. That's why I compromise. That's why I can't be successful. Can I tell you, newsflash, everyone has been injured. Everyone has had bad breaks. But the people who go on to do great things are the people who don't let the limp be an excuse to settle. There are people who know that the limp is temporary, that God would not have allowed it if he didn't have a purpose. There are people of faith who know how to turn the limp into an advantage to their favor. The right attitude is, I might be limping now in a relationship. I might be limping in my health. My business might be limping. I'm not denying that I'm disappointed. Things aren't coming up to my expectations. I'm feeling a little lonely. I've had a setback or two, but I know that Krishna or God is on the throne. I wouldn't be alive. I wouldn't have seen the sunrise this morning if there weren't great things that God had in my future. Consider, if you will, the life of a man born into crushing poverty in the 19th century frontier, lost his mother at the age of 9. His father was unsupportive and frequently rented him out to other farmers, pocketing his wages. He had had less than a year of formal schooling. So would you agree that by any standard, he was at a massive systemic disadvantage? He went on to spend his childhood failing. He failed in business. He lost his first race for the state legislature. His sweetheart died. If he had chosen to limp, he had every reason, credential, and excuse to do so. He could have spent his life in that log cabin telling his neighbors about how the world had conspired against a boy with no education and no money. And of course, you know by now who I'm talking about. Abraham Lincoln chose the leap over the limp. He didn't wait for a good environment to appear. He walked miles to borrow books, read them by fireside. He didn't wait for credit from a boss. He taught himself the legal profession. Every time he was knocked down, he didn't point at the dirt and say, "See, this is why I can't stand up." He treated each failure as a data point, not a destiny. He leaped his own lack of pedigree, his own lack of education, and he ended up holding together a nation divided by civil war. His limps continued in all of that. Manic, depression, poverty, lack of status, enemies coming against him. All that was real, but he refused to let those define who he was. So Krishna or God may have brought you here today. This might be the only time you ever go to a Krishna temple in your life. But there might be actually a reason for it beyond your assignment in the world religions class. There might be a deeper purpose. Krishna might have brought you here today to hear me say, or encourage you, to throw off the limping mindset. Determine that what you've been using as an excuse to limit you is not going to be an excuse anymore. Break the chains, break the strongholds. If you want to be the person of destiny that God created you to be, it's time to change your thinking. Quit believing the lies that you're stuck. The lie that you don't have the talent, that you're the wrong nationality, that you've made too many mistakes. Can I tell you, this is a new day. Krishna is about to turn that limping into leaping, cause you to bloom, to blossom, greater confidence, greater resources, greater influence. You just have to do your part, keep in first place. We do that by chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Think about shifting the internal narrative. The limping mindset is an excuse. I'm at a disadvantage because of my past. The leaping mindset, one takes ownership of one's future. My past is a weight I am training with to become stronger. The limping excuse is, it's not my fault I'm in this position. Taking ownership on the part of the leaper, it may not be my fault, but it is my responsibility. The excuse of the limper, I'll make my move when the circumstances are right, when the environment is fair. The ownership that the leaper takes is, the environment will never be fair, I'm going to make my move anyway. The excuse of the limper is, I need someone to notice me, to thank me, to appreciate me, to give me credit here. The leaper takes ownership by saying, I will become so good that they cannot do without me. They cannot ignore me. The initial purchase of this 8.5 acres on which this current temple sits on, I tender before you as perhaps a real-life example of refusing to let a limp dictate destiny. The story of this temple is the story of moving when all the math said, stay still. In 1991, Mai and I were running a small religious radio station and living with zero worldly credit. And this 8.5 acre property on which the current temple stands right now had stood for 10 years with a for sale sign on it. Not having been sold, this prime hilltop piece of land not having been sold for 10 years, it began to dawn on us that maybe God had actually put it aside for the purpose of building a temple. At that point, we could have come up with a lot of limp, reasonable excuses. We didn't have any money. We didn't have the down payment for this property. Another excuse, limp excuse, the environment. Who are we to build a Hare Krishna temple in a valley which is populated by a tight-knit, religious, homogeneous community? Another limp excuse could have been, there's no one in our corner. There's no one rooting for us or cheering for us. As an example, banks weren't handing out loans to build Hare Krishna temples in Utah. We could have easily looked at our bank balance and said, no way. We're at a disadvantage by lack of capital. We can't buy this land. We could have justified staying in the log house, or we did our services in the basement for 14 years. We could have justified that as the status quo. It's not ideal, but it's good enough. That's what the limping soul would have said. Instead, we made a leap. We didn't stick our hand in the sand and deny the shortcomings, but we just didn't allow them to be an excuse for staying the same. We didn't deny the disadvantages. We just denied their ultimate authority over us. To buy the land, we scoured for every penny. We sold personal items. We got small donations. We did cookie sales at the exit signs of exits of Walmarts and Kmarts in 4 different states. We sold llamas. Now, instead of seeing ourselves as victims of circumstance, we tried to envision ourselves in partnership with the Lord to create millions and millions of universes as architects of our response. We didn't accommodate the limp. We didn't let the limp dictate the status quo. We leaned into the supernatural power of Krishna to make things happen that we couldn't make happen ourselves. We traded the safety of an excuse for the risk of a mission. And this marble temple stands here today as proof that we made the right call. God knows, or Krishna knows, how to take your hopes, your expectations, and supersize them. We would have been happy just to open a storefront in Utah, run the small radio station, pay the bills. But after our leap, Krishna had abundance coming, color festivals coming, tourism coming, a second temple in Salt Lake City coming, overflow beyond what we could have ever thought or imagined. So our conclusion here this afternoon is that limping, hobbling along is not how your story is supposed to go. If you tap into God's power to do something major on His behalf, He will take your dreams and multiply them, supersize them. If you keep Him first place, by glorifying Him, chanting His holy names, we say Krishna, but any bona fide name of God can be sung, praised, chanted. But because you're at the Krishna temple, let's do this one more time. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. If you do this, keep God first place, then I can stand here this afternoon and assure you, freedom is coming, wholeness is coming where things are not a struggle anymore. You're going to be unquestionably free, and then you're going to have the leverage and power to get others free. You're going to, if you keep God first place, go from limping to leaping. Not just from limping to walking, but God's way is to take you from limping to leaping. Just a short song that I wrote here for KHQ Radio. Share it with you. Though the acreage was empty and the obstacles arose, like a winter that never would draw to a close, By the kindness of Krishna, the struggle is stayed in a palace of marble, glorious laid. In 91, the air was thick with the scent of sage, but our spirits were restless, ready to burst from the cage. The limp was whispering, settle for something less. The world is changing, don't invite all this stress. We had a history of hurdles, the scars on our skin, 1,000 good reasons to never let the vision begin. The environment was skeptical, the climate was cold, but our leaf wasn't measured by silver or gold. We're done with excuses, we're done with delay. The limp was just a shadow in the dawning of the day. We leaped into the promise when the world was telling no. Now see the marble rising where the desert used to grow. Yeah, we're done with the excuses, we're done with the delay. The limp was just a shadow in the dawning of the day. Krishna's on the throne and he's clearing out the track. Once we take the leap, man, there's no more looking back. The road wasn't paved, it was jagged and steep, with promises to Krishna that we had to keep. We've been injured by doubt, we've been hindered by those who see only the thorns and never the rose. But 91 was the year we cut through the fear, knowing the voice of Vaikuntha was the only one to hear. No more accommodating wounds or the bad breaks of the past we built on the rock so the temple would last. The limp is only temporary, a moment in the grind. If we leave the why we can in the wreckage of the mind, he wouldn't give the hurdle if the strength wasn't supplied. Now we're walking on the water with the master as our guide. Though the acreage was empty and the obstacles rose like a winter that would never draw to a close. By the kindness of Krishna, the struggle is stayed in a palace of marble and glory was laid. Winding up here. Imagine, you like that graphic? Imagine starting off your life with Krishna like being on a tandem bike for two. You start off wanting yourself to be in the front, to be the guide and the controller. You want God along on your journey, but you don't want him to be in control. You want him to be your step it and fetch it. You want him in the back so he can pedal, but you need to guide. Life, conditioned life, material life teaches us to hold on, to keep, and not to relinquish control of the handlebars. And we don't just want to enjoy the goodness of life. We want to own it. We want to store it up. We want to manipulate it, exploit it for our own purposes. With clenched fists, we cling to our possessions, our opinions, our theories, our beliefs, attitudes, hurts, grievance, money, fearful that losing our grip on the handlebars will bring us down in flames. And all along, in all of that, our salvation consists in letting go. God invites you to let go. You're not the controller. He's the controller. Krishna inviting you, change places. Put him in the front and you in the back. If you do so, his promise is that your life will never be the same. God wants to take you when you relinquish your own little petty control and your own little ego. He wants to take you from limping to leaping. When we were in control of the handlebars, we thought we knew the best way. It was boring, it was predictable, but we thought we're going the shortest distance between 2 points. Now a big difference will be that when God takes the lead, when he gets the handlebars, his ways are not like our ways. He won't just go straight from point A to point B. He takes the scenic route up the mountains, through the rocky places, at breakneck speeds. It'll be all you can do to hang on. Even though it looks like madness, he will say over his shoulder, hang on, Caru, hang on, Adam, hang on, Gerald. We're all worried, we're anxious. We say, Lord, where are you taking it? Where are we going? Krishna just laughs. He doesn't answer. And then we start to learn to trust him. We forget our boring life, and our life becomes a thrill at every moment. And when I get a little scared and apprehensive, because I don't have control anymore, he does. He just looks back over his shoulder, smiles, and gives a reassuring touch on my hand. Can I tell you that Krishna, God, knows how to make all things beautiful in his time? Even things that we think are too far out. You have no idea what God can do in your life if you just let him. So ask yourself, are you limping today? Maybe you believe in God, but you don't fully trust him. You find comfort in him, but you really wouldn't totally put your faith in him. He created you to be free of those constraints. He sees you equipped, empowered, making the most of a difficult situation, being your best despite the limp. He sees you not necessarily as you are now, but he sees of what it is you are capable in the future. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. If you faithfully and consistently praised him, chant his holy names, I'll put you on notice. Your time is coming. Krishna has spoken blessings over the lives of his devotees. He's going to take their stumbling blocks and make them stepping stones. He's going to give you beauty for those ashes. Krishna sent you here today so that I could hopefully strengthen your faith. If you've kept him first place in your life, you're on notice. You're about to feel supernatural strength, supernatural healing, supernatural favor. You may be limping now, but I believe leaping is coming, restoration is coming, great relations, freedom, abundance, the fullness of your destiny in this life, next life, back to home, back to Godhead. Thank you for your kind attention. And if any of that resonates with you, you're welcome to raise your arms. We can all say together, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So now, the next really tough part of the program is singing and dancing. You can stand up for that if you like. You're getting better view that way.
Caru.